Hello, I am foyleman, and today what I want to do is I want to go through Quake 4. Quake 4 was just released, and I want to show you how to get set up for mapping and actually make your first map, test it, and see how things work out. So what I've got already, I've got Quake 4 already installed, ready to go, but what I don't have is a properly set up desktop shortcut. I point that out because what I want is a desktop shortcut that I can manipulate and change some things in there, because right now, whenever you open up the game, what happens is it loads through those animations, one for ID software, and it goes through one for Raven software. I'm going to show you how to skip that. And then whenever it opens, what you need to do is you need to be able to access the console, the game console. And normally to do that, you would hit the tilde key. And right now, there's a couple extra keys. You have to actually hit Control-Alt tilde in order for it to work. And I want to make it simpler. Just make it that one key. And I'm going to show you how to change that too. There are other ways to do it, like changing configuration files, but we just want to make it simple, right from the desktop. So I'm going to right-click, and go to Properties, and now I want to make a change. I want to make a change to my target, okay? If I made a change to my start in, or if I made an incorrect change to my target, I would get an error. Here, for an example. If I accidentally changed my start in instead of my target and applied, you see I get an error. Now if I were to fix that, there you go, and if I were to accidentally make a change inside of my quotation marks, you see quotation marks here, I would get a very similar error. See, it's not valid. So what I want to do is I want to make my changes to the target, delete, to the outside of the quotation marks. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, make the console work. So I'm going to hit a space and go +set. I'm setting this command, and the command is, let's see, it is I'm trying to remember, allow console. And I want to turn that to 1. Turn it on. 1 is on, 0 is off. And now the other thing I want to do is I want to get past those animations. So I'm going to go plus disconnect. And what that's going to do is it's going to load up and just jump right into the game rather than going through all the animations for you because of that. And now you'll see when I hit apply, no error. So I'm all set to go. Now I should point out that I have tried mapping for Quake 4 just one other time other than this, and it really worked out well. It was very simple, so I wanted to try and recreate that here on my home computer so that I could recreate it on a video and show you, and if we come up with some errors, we can go through the errors together and I can show you what might come up, what might not come up, and it's a good way to learn, and good way for me to show you what could happen in your environment. Okay, so now I'm going to load up the game. I'm going to double click it, load up the game, and we're going to give it a second to load up. And then what's going to happen is we're going to open up the console, and I'm going to show you some things inside of there. Now when I hit the console, the tilde key, my console opens up. I don't have to go through the extra pieces to the extra settings. And you notice we went right past all those opening videos. We didn't need all that stuff. Now before I jump into the editor, I want to show you a couple other things. Let's say you want to look up some of the other commands that are available inside the editor. There's two things you can type in here. You can do list cmds, and that's going to list all these commands, and you're going to see I can't scroll, I can't look with my arrow key. You have to use your page up to go up and your page down to go down, okay? So you can look through all these if you're looking for something specific, you want to play with some things, you want to find some secrets or whatever. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to show you, well, first let me clear the screen. I type in clear. That clears my console so I'm not confused there. I can list CVARs. Oh, or SVARs, whichever one you want to pronounce that. And those are the VARs that are like controlling the game, the way it's rendered, what you see, what you don't see, and that kind of stuff. Okay, let me clear that out and go right into the editor. Yes, there is an editor built right into this game, and it is Radiant based. You know, you don't need the GTK Radiant, which I don't think is quite available yet, but there's perfectly this editor built in is perfectly fine. You don't need any other editor right now. So let me load editor, and it's going to launch the Radiant-based editor, and hopefully this is the same editor that I'm used to. And what we are seeing here are some errors, and it has to do with something's not rendering correctly. And you know what? I think I know what it is. Look, we've got washed out colors, and we've got nothing rendering. So I have experienced this with other games in the past, and I'm going to see, I told you this is going to be a good thing for us to go through. I'm going to reload the game. What this is my video settings in the game are affecting the way the editor is showing up. and I'm going to look at my settings. So I'm going to reload the game, and I'm going to go into my video settings, and I'm going to find out what could be causing it. I can think of a couple things. First of all, settings. My brightness I'm thinking of is one thing. Here's my brightness level. Now watch outside of this windowed view, like my icons over there on the left-hand side. When I move this around, the brightness level changes. So I'm going to do what looks to be pretty normal. Let's see. That's probably pretty close to normal right there. And the other thing is, I'm thinking anti-aliasing. The editor can't handle anti-aliasing. Good. Now, settings will take effect next time you start Quake 4. If it doesn't say that, it doesn't matter whether it says it or not. It means it. You have to exit the game and you have to restart it. Otherwise, the settings will not take effect inside of the editor itself. So there, I close the game. Give it a second. Let's load up Quake 4 again. Give it a chance to load up. I will pop up on the console, type in editor, and it should load and look good. Fingers crossed. There you go. That's what I want to see. I want to see some grids. I don't want to see any errors in this console and so forth. All right. All right, let's go through some of the pieces that we see here. We have our window, our 3D view. Okay, that's like our camera view. That's what we're going to, kind of what we're going to see in the game, kind of not, but really that'll give us an idea of what we're going to see. Here's our different tabbed areas. Okay, we'll get into entities later. Entity editor. That was just like in the previous. If you used to other games, it's like hitting not our surface inspector, but the N key, like to pull up your entity editor. Here's our media stuff, loading our textures and our user interfaces and sounds and stuff. Our textures, none are loaded, so we don't see any in there. The console. Console is going to show us errors and what's going on. And groups, you know, grouping things. We're not concerned about that in this tutorial. I should tell you what we're doing in this tutorial. We're going through the setup, you know, the whole process of setting up, and then we're going to go into actually creating our map, and we're going to make a square room. We're going to throw a player in there, a light, and we're going to play test it. So it's actually like creating your first map from zero up to actually playing. Now we have the Z window. Z window is like our height indicator. It tells us how high stretched things are. It's like looking at the side view, but only in like a one-dimensional plane. All right. You know, we're working with a three-dimensional plane here, so we should be able to see we're looking at the top. We should also be able to see the side and the front. Those are our three dimensions, X, Y, Z. And we can actually change that right from here. I'll click inside the window so I know we're right here. I'm going to hold down the control and hit tab. There's our front view. Hit tab again. There's our side view. Hit tab again. There's our top view. So there you go. There's all your three views that we can switch between. Now, while I'm at it, you know, keyboard shortcuts, learn them, because that's the way you're going to get around the game. That's how you're going to learn what the heck is going on. Okay, and if you don't know your shortcuts, in some cases, you can go up to here and say edit, and you see there's a entity info is I actually. That's information, not entity window. Next window, like I said, control tab. Now if you don't see it, see your shortcut key, you can go over to help. Go to your command list. I know all this stuff because I've been through a number of different Radiants, and this is very similar. And I'm glad to see that everything is similar in this game too. It's going to make things real easy, a lot of fun. And now we are pretty much ready to get started here. We need to select a texture to work with. And whenever you're mapping, a smart idea is to start with, I'm going to go to the media window down here, is to start with your common textures. And inside the common textures is something called caulk. So let's see, let's load up some textures. Now the textures are just listed out here. We could go about it this way, but this is very confusing trying to get through. It's nicer to scroll through like the visual version of all these. And to do that, I am going to double click on common. Alright, and I know all this because Doom 3, you know, Doom 3 works same editor as everything. This is great. And when I go over the texture window, you'll see they all loaded up. Alright, and what we want is the caulk I was saying. Plus the caulk is an efficient way of not using up our resources, our memory, and that kind of stuff. So we can save the resources that we're working with when we're playing the game, making the game, everything like that. Caulk will keep things sealed up. We won't have any kind of leaks. I'll get to leaks in a second, and that kind of stuff. So we're going to start with caulk. That's how we're going to create our world. And now, let's see. I can draw out. What I'm going to do is a box. Like I said, I'm going to just do a 256 by 256. So I left click and draw out my box. You can kind of see it showing up in the 3D window over there. There we go. See it draw out. There's our caulk texture, and it's selected the brush. I can't see so well the area I selected. I could zoom in. I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom in, and I can't see the corner. So if I right click and drag, I can actually drag to the area. You can kind of see a dotted line as I'm moving, but my window is in there. And I can zoom back out. What you're looking at here is a grid work, okay? My grid work by default is set up for every one of these blocks is 8 units wide. And that's a good starting point to work with. It's a good thickness, like a wall thickness, and you can adjust things as you want using, change the grid work. And I also have snap to grid on. I like to work with snap to grid because in some of the older games it used to create problems to not have the snap to grid, and we don't want to have any problems when we're mapping, especially our first time. So I suggest just to leave the things the way they are. You can experiment with it later. Alright, and now let's get into our 3D window. I'll click into there. And some people like to use the mouse to look, you can move around in the window. And I like to use the keyboard shortcuts to move around because maybe I'm old-fashioned or something. I don't know. That's what I like. See, I'm using the left key and the right arrow key, forward, back. Okay, that moves around. Now in some cases I need to move up and down, and I can use the D as in Don to move up, C to move down, and I can strafe too, side to side. I can use my comma, that goes left, and my period goes right. There you go. So those are some keys that I'm going to be using a lot in this tutorial. Now right now we just have this flat brush here. As you can see, I can move under it. This is flat 8-unit brush that's 256 by 256. I want to make it bigger. I'm going to drag it down a touch. I'm going to go up above 256, and it'll make sense why I went just above and just below in a second. Now my camera, which is this thing right here, that's a letter Z to tell you you're looking down the Z line, which is, you're on the XY, so you're looking down the Z. My camera's inside this box, which is why it all disappeared when I stretched it up. See, I'll stretch it down a little bit under the camera, and then right through the camera, okay? And notice, whenever I'm stretching the brush, I am clicking outside. I am left-clicking outside of the brush to stretch, because if I clicked inside, I would actually drag the brush. And we don't want to be dragging. We want to be stretching. Okay, so there. Now the reason I went 256 by outside these little lines here is because I'm going to use a function called hollow. Right up here, it says hollow. So I click on that, and it hollows it out to my grid settings, 8 units. Which is what I said is a good wall thickness and stuff. And it hollowed it out so that I have just this empty box that I can work with. Now hollow can be a bad thing in some cases. I suggest you only use hollow whenever you're using like square blocks. That's it. Hollow that out and it's fine. Because what happened in here, so let me zoom in with my arrow keys, and I can move up and down with my D and C, is it overlapped the brushes. See, they're overlapping. And we don't want that. And if it's other than a square brush, it's much more difficult to fix an overlapping brush. So what I'm going to do is I am going to fix the overlapping. And while I'm at it, let me talk about some of these other tools that are not safe, but you have alternatives, okay? Like I said, hollow. Use only whenever you're working with squares, because other things can create some weird results. Another one. Do not use CSG subtraction, and I can see it up here. I can't believe they still have this button in here. CSG subtraction is an evil tool. Evil, evil tool. Okay? When you see the CSG subtraction tool, think evil. Okay? I'm trying to put that into your mind here, because some people say, oh, it's fine, it's fine. Well then, these people haven't experienced problems yet, and they will, I'm telling you. What CSG subtraction tool does is I can have this brush and I can draw another brush out here and subtract it from the other, geometry that's here. And that, if I do it if I do something slightly off, it's going to subtract weird. It's going to create errors. The game is not going to understand, like, whenever it goes through the viz process where certain areas of optimization should be, shouldn't be. You're going to have errors, and you know what? You can't go back to fix those errors. It's too late. You got to start over, or go back to a last save point, which save often. That's another good point. Save often, and if you can, save under multiple names, so that if you do accidentally save over a good one with a bad save, you can always go back to another name, a different point in your mapping process, and you don't lose all the work that you've already done. Okay, so here we are, and I want to move some walls around because I want to get rid of this overlapping that's going on. So let's show you how to select. What I want to do is right now everything is selected. I'm going to deselect walls by holding down the shift and left clicking that, left clicking that. Now I just deselected the floor and the ceiling. And I only have the wall selected. And that's because I want to stretch the ceiling, the walls there, to be under and above those two brushes. And notice, whenever I stretch, I could stretch all the walls at the same time, everything that is selected. So be careful. Often I'll hit escape key to deselect everything so I'm not accidentally moving things around that I don't want to move around. And you'll see me doing that a lot in a little bit. Now we want to fix the wall situation. I'm going to deselect the opposing walls so that I can get rid of this overlapping. Again, I am going to stretch both walls at the same time by selecting outside of them. There we go. Now they're not overlapping anymore. So I'm going to escape because I no longer need anything selected. I want to make sure everything is deselected because our next step would, normally at this point, like I said, save and save off, and I would save normally. But the reason I don't want to save is because I happen to know this is the first time I'm making a map. And I don't want to... You know what? Let's go right into saving because it is a wise thing to do. Now to save, I'm going to go to save, but where do we save is a good question. This is the first time going, and we have to create some folder structures. And I don't know exactly what those folder structures are for the Quake 4 game. So we're also going to experiment and see what that is. So let's open up our Windows Explorer. Okay. Let's go to My Computer. Let's go to C. We want program files. I'm going into where the game was installed. It was installed in ID Software, Quake 4, Base. Here's our base folder. I know what I'm looking for is in the base folder. Now what I want to do is I want to open up one of these pack files. These pack files can be opened up with WinZip. If you don't have WinZip, it's a zip compression tool. You can download winzip.com, download WinZip for free and install it, and then assign it here. So I would right click and I would just open it up. And if it asks you how to open it up, you're going to go through and you're going to say you're going to select the WinZip tool to be your opening. So if I was to say open with, that's a good way for me to show you. I'll select WinZip from here. And yes, always use that. It's already set up as my default right there. So I say OK. So it's going to open up this pack file. And here's all the files that are packed inside of it. And what I'm looking for is a map file. Where am I going to save maps? I don't know if it's the first one. I may have to go through each one of these. So let's see what we got. Configuration files, AF files, definitions. Let's scroll faster. FX, TGA and DDS. Those are textures. Going through. Good way to explore too. GUI, our user interfaces. VP. I'm not sure what the VP is. Bump. Looks like bump maps and stuff like that. And a map file. That's what we want. We want a map file. And that happens to be in maps game. So I'll close that. I need to create maps game. And I need to create it relative to the base folder. Okay, because this is in the base folder. So I need to create some new folders here. New folder, maps. Let's go inside of maps. Let's create game, new folder, game. Oh, game, not games. And that's where we're going to be saving our stuff. So I'm going to leave this open so we can look at what happens later. I'm going to save this new map. I'm going to do save as. It's a new map. I can just save. And we're going to call this test 1. How about that? Test 1. Save. All right, now we have a backup. We saved our map. We're safe. Anything goes wrong, we still have a saved map that we can go back to. See, it just made a map file there for us. Now we want to go into some texturing. Let's put some visuals into this thing. We just have a box right now and a solid box. Okay, let's see. I'm going to hold down the shift and the control, and I'm going to click. That selected only that one brush face. Let me show you. I'm going to use my comma key here to move side to side. See, it's no red tinge on that wall, but there's a red tinge on that wall. I just selected just that one brush face. All right. So let's give that a texture. Let's load up some textures here. All right. We have our common textures, and there's not going to be anything in our common textures here. But there could be something in our common wall, so let's load that up. Let's double-click it. And let's go into our textures, see what we loaded up. And there's some good textures. Now I'm looking for anything with a funky name that I want to avoid. Like if there's a tilde, an at symbol, or something strange at the beginning or end of it. I want to avoid it because that could indicate that the texture is transparent or has some alpha qualities, meaning like picture like a fence. You know, you can see through a fence, but you can also see the fence. And that's because it has transparent qualities. And I don't want that in my wall because it could create problems when I compile. I want a solid wall. So I want to select a solid texture. So let's select, here's one. We'll just select that. There we go. And it put the texture in its default size and just tiled it around. And, you know, this is a test map, so that's good enough for now. And in a second, I'll get into some other methods of moving your textures around and sizing them and stuff. But first, I want to get all the walls together. So I'm going to make sure I have that. Control, Shift, left click. I have that selected. And I want to copy it over to there. Hopefully the keyboard shortcut is Control, middle mouse key. Yeah, there. So now, see, I copied it. I paste that copy over to that wall, and I'm going to copy it over to that wall. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to show you some other things about textures. You can change them. Hit the S key, hopefully, and it brings up this, yep, the surface inspector, okay? And you can see the different settings. I can shift, I can change the sizes, you know, it's actually moving it side to side here. And I can move it up and down, I can rotate. And one thing I want to show you is I want to show you fit. I use fit a lot because I want to fit the texture width and height, right? So that's an excellent tool to use. I use that a lot so that I can fit the texture to the brush that I'm using and it's like the perfect size. Let's say OK. Now another thing you can do is you can manipulate this yourself with the arrow keys. Let me show you. I'll do it from here first. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and press arrow up. See, the texture is moving up and moving down. I can really fine-tune my texture this way. And let's say I want to move in, and I want to move it so that it lines up there. Okay, I'll hit my C key to move down, and oops, too far. Make sure, yeah, I look pretty centered there. Okay, there you go. There's our wall, and I'll just leave it textured that way. It's not important. We're just doing a test map here. And now I'll escape to make sure I don't accidentally change anything else. And now let's put a new floor in. So let's go over to Media, and let's look up some floors. Right now we have all our walls open. Let's go to Common Floors. Now, I could go through it this way. I could look through floors this way. Like if I were to Control, Shift, left click on there to select that floor, it automatically selected the caulk texture that I have on there. I want to look at some floors. I could say, oh, look, ceilings are in there too. Good thing to know. We're going to need that. I could click floor too, and see there's our texture, and it automatically applied it. So I could bypass loading all the floors, which I'm going to do anyways. I'm going to load all the floors, go over to my texture so I can see what I'm doing. And I don't know if I trust that texture, because that might be black, or that might mean, hey, it's transparent in there. I doubt it's transparent, but I want to be on the safe side. So let's load something like this on the floor. There we go. And let's escape and select Control Shift left click the ceiling. Let's load a ceiling. How about that? There you go. We just textured the walls and everything. So now's a good time to save so I don't make any mistakes. Good. Now we need two more things. We need a place to spawn, and we need some light in here, because right now it's just going to be pitch black. We don't want that. So let's get a player spawn in here. Escape again. I don't want to accidentally change things that I don't want to be changing. I'm going to right click this screen over here for entities. There's my entities. All right. I am looking for info player start. There we go. Now you can see I have info player deathmatch and info player team, you know, deathmatch games or control the flag, CTF games. Right now I just want the info player start, which is your single player game. And that is because whenever I'm testing this map, it's easier for me to just jump into a single player game and test my map. Later on, I can go into all the deathmatch stuff and load up the deathmatch settings and stuff into the game. But those are extra steps that I don't need to be taking right now. Alright, so I'm going to select Info Player Start. And there it popped in an entity. See it over there, see it over here, right? And it seems to be hovering in the air. So let's select inside of it and move it down to the floor. Don't move it in the floor, because one of two things will happen. Either your feet will get stuck in there, and you won't be able to get out whenever you spawn in, or it'll cause compiling problems because it's out in this voidness. You know, if here's a good thing for me to bring up. Whenever you're compiling the map, this thing has to be a sealed box. You can't have any holes in it at all. It has to be perfectly sealed, otherwise it leaks. Light will leak into the voidness of this outer space, and the compiling process will stop, and it'll say, hey, you have a leak. It'll say leaked. And that means, light is leaking out somewhere, and it will not compile properly. And how that determines is really, like it comes from an entity like a light, and it says, it bounces around, it says, oh, I found a hole. And if you load this up after after it compiles, hopefully you'll see this like red line, jagged line that you'll be able to follow actually in this window too, and you'll be able to find your leak. And if it doesn't load up, you can go over to here, file. Yeah, it says point file. That has it too. You can load your point file, and it'll load up the information. It'll say, hey, you have a leak over here. And remember, we looked over, yep, over here in miscellaneous, it says next and previous leak spot. Good. Okay. So you can find your next one in case you have more than one, and then you can seal it up. And you don't want any leaks, and that's just like having this. That would be a leak because that's out into the voidness of space. I'll escape so I can deselect that. And let me show you another leak. Let's see, that wall. If I were to have this open up, see, there's a leak. That's a leak. I want to make sure that is sealed up good and tight. Escape. Now let's move our player around. See, I select from this 3D window. I don't select from here because let me unselect everything. If I were to try and select from here, it will work because first thing it does, it selects the entity. But let's say I was trying to select my ceiling. Why didn't my ceiling select? Or let's say I want to select the floor. I do from here. I'm looking from the top down. I try to select it selects the ceiling. That's because it selects either the entity first or the uppermost brush. And so that's why I select right from here, from this window, because then I know I'm selecting exactly what I want. And I'm going to put him over here, my player. And I want my player to look in this direction. So I want to pull up in the entity editor. Two ways to do that, I'm hoping. Hit the N key. N is Nancy. There you go. Pulls that open. See, it switched the tab over here. I wasn't texted, and it switched to entity. And now I want him to look in this direction. And I can do that right from this. This is actually my view area. And if I say I want him to look in this corner, 225 there, you'll see it added the angle 225. And in here, there's now an arrow pointing in the directions he's looking. And there's an arrow in here too. Let me show you that. I'm going to right-click this screen and drag it into the center. And I'm going to use my mouse button to zoom in. And there's that arrow. All right, let me zoom back out. Drag it back to here. There we go. And I'm going to escape because next we want to add a light. Let's add a light over here. Right click. There's our light. Boom. Now it's in. Put the light somewhere in the middle. I think this is our light is up here, huh? There we go. We want to put it inside, not outside the level. I'm going to put right here, right in the middle. And I'll move it over now. Let me show you that in the 3D window. I'm moving around with the arrow keys and the S key is our surface inspector. We don't want that. I want my D key. All right. Now that is just a white light, but I can actually change the color of that light, and I can do that with the shortcut key K. And that pulls up, look at all my color spectrums, and I can pick any color I want. And I can be yellow, red, and I'm going to do a nice dark blue color. Click OK. And look, that thing turned to blue. So now I have this nice blue color for a light. And here is our fall off. That's what this box is. That means it falls, the light falls full brightness down to darkness into that area. So now if I just leave this like it is, which I'm going to do actually, all this will be nice and bright blue color lighting, and this will be all black because there won't be any light over there. So that's pretty neat. All right, I'm going to escape, and I'm going to save my map, make sure it's saved. Good. Now we're done. We just made our first map, and we're ready to compile it, BSP it, and so that we can play it inside the game. And that's going to be done up here in our BSP commands. And really all we're worried about is turning it into a BSP. And like I said, that's going to go through the three processes. It's going to go through our BSP process, it's going to go through our viz process, and then it's going to go through our lighting process. And that's a good point. Those three processes. The BSP process takes the map and turns it into something the game can understand. The viz process takes that and optimizes it for better gameplay. All right, and then the last process, it could be flare, could be rad. What it's doing is it's lighting the map. And if it doesn't light the map, two things will occur. Either it will be full bright, or it'll be either completely black, or you will see a sky, but your player and his models, all that stuff will be pure black. And that's a good indicator. So if you come across that, that means that it is all black and something's wrong with the lighting. look at your console for errors, which we'll be doing. Anyway, let's BSP this thing. Let's hit BSP and it'll compile the map. Okay. Alright, done. It's a small map. It shouldn't take very long. Let's look for errors. Our console came up. I'm looking for errors in here. I don't see anything wrong. You know, brush information doesn't say leaked, doesn't say error, blah, blah, blah. It's done. Let's see what it made, because I left this open to see what would happen. All right, we have an auto-save. See, it automatically saves your map, but that's not always trustworthy, because what if it saves a bad copy? You know, you don't want that. All right. Here's our map. Here's some compiling. It doesn't create a BSP anymore. Look at that. It creates this proc file, this other stuff, and the CM. Pretty neat stuff. Okay. I'm not used to this format, so it'll be a whole new thing for me to explore later on. So we're done with this. We are ready to test this thing inside the game. And how are we going to do that? We can close this out and load the game, but you know what? Doom 3 has this function that allows you to jump right into the game. And I'm going to try it out, and I'm going to hope it works in this. It's called the F2 key. So hit F2, and hopefully it did. The game loaded up. See, I love that. You know, you can jump right from the editor into the game. Console's open, so I can test my map. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to load up the map. And you can either type map, or in this case, since you're a developer, you want to test a map, I would type DEV for developer, dev map. DEV MAP. So dev map. Now we're going to load the map. And remember the folders that we did? Right now, if I just type this in the map name, it's going to look in the maps folder and look for our map. And our map is not in maps folder. Our map is in map game folder. So I'm going to go map. Was it map or maps? I think it's maps. Oh, actually, we're in the maps folder. I'm sorry. We want game, and test 1 is the name of our level. Okay, so I went into the game folder, test 1. When I hit enter, it should load our map, and we shouldn't have any problems loading up and playing the game. Okay, there it goes. It's loading up, doing its thing. Click to continue. We're in. Look at that. There's our blue lighting corner. I told you we'd be facing that corner. The other area is all black. It's a little laggy because I'm also video recording this thing at the same time. This is awesome. Now I can start making maps. You can start making maps and start doing things. This is pretty cool. And that's it. Oh, I got to show you how to get out. Check this out. It took me a second the first time whenever I was working with Doom to get out of here. Look at my cursor. When I hit down the console, I can actually get out. See, my cursor came out, and then I can close this out. And I'm right back into here. And that's it. That's our whole process for mapping. So now you can get started. You can get this installed, loaded, edit, create your first map, get in there, play with it, and start creating your own things. And you're all set. So I hope this tutorial was good for you. Go over to modsonline.com for more tutorials, help in the forums, for everything that you need. And you know what? Happy mapping.